This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 164 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about the elegance of the gray area. This week, I'm going to be sharing some thoughts that have been spinning around in my head for quite a few years, and this just happened to be the week I was able to pull them together into something kind of cohesive. I think what I'm trying to do this week is refine our definition of smart. I'm going to read the piece in its entirety after I thank my generous sponsors who helped me get this stuff out there. First, I'd like to thank Kidum. If 2020 taught us anything, it's that the tools and routines that have traditionally powered classrooms need more flexibility. If it taught us another thing, it's that piecemeal online tools cannot replace a well-designed quality curriculum. So how to maintain both flexibility and quality? Is that too much to ask? At Kidum, they don't think so. The Kidum education platform houses curriculum, instruction, and assessment in one place. And they partner with top-rated curriculum publishers like Open Up Resources, Fish Tank Learning, and Illustrative Math through Kendall Hunt. So schools and districts can deliver the highest quality digital curriculum on Kidum's flexible platform and continue teaching in any environment. Educators love their teacher-friendly platform with options to engage in discourse online or in person. And students love Kidum for how easy it is to see their assignments and complete their work interactively. Choose from their curriculum menu or import your existing curriculum to bring it to life with Kidum. Request a demo today at teach.kidum.co/pedagogy. Support also comes from Kialo EDU. Kialo EDU is a free online platform that facilitates discussions and debates with students, from middle school all the way up to university level. Using Kialo EDU, students break down their ideas into simple pros and cons, individual elements of an argument that come together into a nuanced understanding of the concepts they're discussing. Whether your students are discussing literature, exploring philosophy, or having a debate just for the sake of it, Kialo EDU helps students to express themselves and develop crucial critical thinking skills. It's hard to keep students discussing and learning together right now. So whether your students are all online at once or split into A-B schedules, Kialo EDU will help you facilitate both synchronous and asynchronous classroom activities. So what are you waiting for? Create a free account at kialo-edu.com. That's KIALO-edu.com and try it out for yourself. And now here is my offering for the week, a little essay I'm calling The Elegance of the Gray Area. I once observed an argument between two friends of mine. Two men in their 20s. We'll call them Joe and Lee. At the time, I was developing a pretty good crush on Joe. I have zero memory of what they were actually arguing about, but at some point, Joe leaned forward in his seat and said, "You've got to be kidding, Lee. Do you know what year women got the right to vote?" Looking mildly panicked, Lee stammered for words, glancing around the diner we were sitting in as if the answer would pop up from another booth. Joe let him squirm for a few seconds, then finally put him out of his misery. 1918, Lee, he revealed, falling back and picking up his coffee with satisfaction. 1918. If hearing this you're thinking, wait, that's wrong, it was actually 1920, just hang on. Also, this was before smartphones and Google, so no one could fact check. Joe had employed a classic move. Make your opponent feel unsure, unsteady. Intimidate them into thinking you're smarter than them, and you'll be well on your way to winning the argument. And it worked. Lee kind of withered, and Joe continued to pummel him until he gave in. And even though Joe was being kind of a dick, and I didn't know the answer either, and I hated it for Lee, Joe's confidence was impressive. I couldn't help but crush on him a little harder due to the fact that he knew stuff. He knew facts like that and was able to access them at just the right time when it mattered. It was the kind of thing that impressed me in the late 90s. Not so much anymore. I've spent a lot of years talking with and listening to some very smart people, And one thing I've noticed is that the people who are legitimate experts in their fields rarely spout off facts like they are the final word. Their assertions don't back you into a corner or embarrass you into silence. Their delivery is often quieter, more nuanced. The smartest people in the world are least likely to have singular one-note answers to difficult questions. They're more likely to respond with, "It depends," and then, if you're willing to stick around and listen, share ideas that take a little more time to develop. And I want to take a moment to elevate that, because I believe that if we spend more time practicing this kind of thinking, if we honor the true elegance of that gray area, we will all be a lot better off. This is not a new concept, the idea that more knowledge leads to fewer clear-cut answers. We see it in Albert Einstein's quote, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." We see it in Costa and Calic's Habits of Mind, 16 dispositions of intelligence that include flexible thinking, or being able to change your mind when new information becomes available. There's also the Dunning-Kruger effect, the tendency of low-ability people to overestimate their ability or knowledge, like when someone who has taken a semester of 9th grade Spanish might claim to speak the language, while someone with years of study and a summer living in Costa Rica would rate their Spanish as just okay. For me, the appreciation for gray area thinking really started to take shape in 2018, which was episode 107, when I interviewed author and literacy consultant Jen Saravallo, who is considered an authority on helping students become better readers. We were talking about text leveling, the practice of labeling a book with a letter to indicate its reading level. Saravallo had observed a lot of teachers misusing these levels, and she wanted to fix that. The problem was that in addition to labeling books, teachers were also labeling students with reading levels, and often assigning them to books that were too difficult for fluent reading. This practice was often driven by administrators who demanded that teachers show progress in the number of reading levels a student moved through over a school year. What Saravallo wanted teachers to do instead got my attention because it was much more holistic and flexible. When helping students choose books, she said, we need to look at a couple of different assessments, factors such as motivation, background knowledge, culture, and English language proficiency. Once we have a sense of where kids are, she said, we still need to be flexible when they go to choose. So if I have a kid who knows a lot about dinosaurs who typically reads books around level O through P, if it's a dinosaur book and he wants to read it and it's a level R or S, maybe that's okay. Saravallo's approach made a lot more sense, and if teachers embraced it, many more students would grow to love reading and in turn become better readers. But I knew that for a certain type of teacher, one who hungers for clear guidelines, who regularly seeks out best practices in order to do the right thing, that recommendation would be frustrating because it was messy. If we can resist that impulse for one right answer, if we can relax into that gray area, we may reach a place where that kind of thinking actually feels better, more true, somehow more accurate, even in its imprecision. Because like so many other things in life, teaching humans is not an exact science, and doing it well requires nuanced thinking. It's one of the main reasons real human teachers are still needed to teach our students, why our work can never be fully replicated by machines. It's our ability to process nuance. So why do we resist the gray area? One big downside to this kind of thinking is that it can look weak. There's a vulnerability that comes with admitting you don't know something with 100% certainty. Many people can't handle that kind of exposure and would prefer to either remain silent or boldly state something as fact, even if they don't have a very strong foundation to stand on. A few months after Joe and Lee's argument, I happened to mention it to Joe. And he confided in me that he hadn't actually known the year women got the right to vote when he brought it up that night. He had a rough idea of the general time period, so he just picked a year for the sake of the argument. He knew it would be stronger and would sound better if he went with an actual year. This revelation disappointed me for two reasons. One was that Joe didn't actually know things like I thought he did. The other, deeper disappointment was that he was so insecure that he faked it. Not only that, he faked it for the sake of looking smart and intimidating a friend. Reliving that moment in my mind when he threw that date out at Lee with such bravado, I saw no strength at all. Had he handled that moment with more humility, he would have had a much more powerful impact. Another misinterpretation of gray area thinking is that it's deceitful. When a public figure gives a vague response to a question, we say they're not giving a straight answer or that they're talking like a politician. And because there probably are times when smoke and mirrors are actually being deployed, it can be extra frustrating when we're looking for answers and nothing concrete is offered. I've seen this attitude expressed a lot over the last year as scientists have struggled to learn about the COVID-19 virus and the rest of us have struggled to adjust to changing information. I'll hear conversations that sound like this. Who knows anymore? One week they say masks don't work, the next week we're all supposed to wear them. First they say it doesn't affect kids, then they say kids are super spreaders. I don't know what the truth is. Although I sympathize with the frustration, seeing it as an issue of truth feels off to me. When it comes to something this complex, I don't believe truth is this perfect, clear thing that someone is hiding in a lockbox for personal reasons or financial gain. When someone seems to be sitting on the fence or contradicts a statement they made a few weeks before, it doesn't have to mean that they're hiding something. As more information becomes available, knowledge evolves. We study a problem, try a solution, see how it works, then study it some more. The more complicated a problem is, the less certain they are going to be about how to solve it. One final caution against the gray area is one that deserves attention. There are some issues we shouldn't be gray about. Looking at a problem from both sides can perpetuate injustice when one of those sides is doing real harm to the other. Being too gray in our thinking about some issues can slow necessary change and allow harm to continue. So, what would it look like? At times when we want gray area thinking to happen and we want to elevate that, if we want to move toward a place where we embrace it more often, what would that look like? Here are some ideas. In our interactions with students, when we share our ideas, we can model gray area thinking. When we see students practice it, we can point it out and praise them for it. In our instructional design, learning tasks can be crafted with generous amounts of choice built in so that students decide how they will access the material, what information they need, and what tools will work best for them. These tasks can be geared toward helping students develop their own theories and exploring possibilities, rather than arriving at a single correct answer. In our assessments, feedback can take precedence over grades, so learning is a continuous, iterative loop. Portfolio assessment, looking at progress over time in a body of work, can play a much larger role than forced answered tests. When tests are given, partial credit can be offered for work shown, or when a good argument is made against a poorly worded question. At the ends of tests, students can be given questions like, "Tell me something you learned that I didn't ask about." In our professional conversations, when we talk about strategies and methods, we can stop saying things like, "That doesn't work," or "These kids can't do that." Instead, we can say things like, "This is what I'm trying right now," or "I haven't solved that problem yet." In leadership, decisions can be made with the input of many voices. When a new initiative is rolled out, it can come with this message: "We are going to try this. It will probably be imperfect, and when it is, We're going to see if we can keep what works, change what doesn't, and learn and grow from the experience. In our discipline, zero tolerance policies and exclusionary discipline practices, which create far more problems than they solve, can be replaced with restorative practices that develop individualized responses to individual transgressions, rather than enforce one-size-fits-all punishments. In how we define gender, as more people identify themselves as non-binary, transgender, or gender fluid, we can relax into the use of these terms and move towards seeing every person as an individual human, referring to them with whatever language they prefer, rather than struggling to fit them into restrictive labels. In how we define race and ethnicity, as we continue to move further away from anyone fitting into narrow racial or ethnic categories, we can simply approach each other with broad and respectful curiosity, where we see color and everything else too. Who are you? What wholly unique combination of culture, genetics, geographic movement, family history, and life experience makes you who you are? And in our efforts to be woke, when it comes to using the right language and backing the right individuals and organizations around equity issues, it may seem like the rules keep changing. Instead of feeling defensive or angry about this, we can soften ourselves to the uncertainty, stay open to feedback, and adopt a growth mindset. Using the exact right terms every single time matters so much less than your general respect for others and your openness to learning and growing. We have gotten incredibly divided over the last few years, and one reason for that may be that we have stopped having slow, nuanced conversations, if we ever had them to begin with. Having these kinds of conversations, embracing the gray area, isn't easy. It requires patience, it can cause discomfort, it demands a certain level of peace in our surroundings, a lack of chaos, and plenty of processing time. We have few models to learn this from. We don't see it on many news channels, we don't see it in most of our family gatherings, and we don't see it enough in schools. But we could. If anyone has the opportunity to open up space for nuance, to teach people how to be impressed not by loud, rigid, conversation-ending facts, but by subtlety and humility and complication, it's us. To read this essay in writing, visit cultofpedagogy.com, click podcast, and choose episode 164. And to get a weekly email from me about my newest blog posts, podcast episodes, courses, and products, sign up for my mailing list at cultofpedagogy.com/subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.